Zombies have taken the world by storm as of late. We see them everywhere, from movies to TV to video games. Everyone's put in their own 2 cents on the matter. How they form, how they die, what chance the world has, and are they even possible?
Many myths have spread across the world about supposed zombies, such as the Haitian voodoo victims, but we're here to provide the facts. What has evolved on the planet that resembles zombie-like symptoms the most? We're here to talk about prions, chemical substances, and even Toxoplasma gondii.
Chemical substances such as drugs and neurotoxins often get sidestepped in the grandiose apocalypse scenarios of movies and games. These substances, however, are designed to affect the brain, the very center of behavior and action. It's no wonder that they are used in what is perhaps the original first sighting of zombies as we know them.
In the 1980s, anthropologist Wade Davis traveled to Haiti after a man claiming to be Clairvius Narcisse came out of the woodwork. Clairvius, mind you, had been dead for 18 years. This zombie told that a voodoo priest, or Bokur, had used his sorcery to bring him back from the dead and enslave him. Davis, however, found that a powder used during this ceremony was chock full of neurotoxins and drugs, namely the pufferfish extract, tetrodotoxin, and a plant known as Datura stramonium, or Jimson weed.
Clairvius Narcisse walked into a hospital in Haiti claiming to have been a zombie for 18 years. Now, stuff like that had happened before, but this was the first time that doctors actually had proof that he did die. They signed the papers, and then they buried him the next day. He actually even had a scar on his face from the nail that got driven into the casket when they buried him. And then he says he remembers witch doctors bringing him out of the grave and being turned into a slave working in the cane fields, which is crazy. Now, how could this happen? Well, Wade Davis decided he was going to go down to Haiti, immerse himself in the culture, and figure it out. So he went down to Haiti and had a bunch of zombie potions analyzed. They all contained tetrodotoxin. Now, this is a crazy toxin that comes from pufferfish, made famous by the Japanese cuisine fugu. But what tetrodotoxin does is that it lowers your vital functions to such a point that people might actually proclaim you dead and bury you. Alright, so here's the theory. Witch doctors take this potion, they blow it on somebody that contains tetrodotoxin. People think they're dead, they bury them, then they dig them up again and turn them into zombies. Tetrodotoxin, though, is just the trick to make people think you're dead, so they write you off and bury you. But there's another drug that actually turns you into a zombified state. That drug comes from a plant known as Datura. I'm in a whole bunch of plants called Datura. It's a deadly poisonous plant. It has a very strong aroma to it. In fact, it's making me a little bit nervous that while I'm in here, I could take in too many of the fumes. Now, if somebody were to feed you a slow and steady dose of that plant, you would pretty much remain in a zombified state for your whole life. You're halfway between living and dead.
How do these 2 ingredients make someone into a so-called zombie, though? Is it hallucinogens? Well, not quite.
Tetrodotoxin is a chemical substance that affects the nervous system and is found in the livers and gonads of pufferfish. This chemical has the formula C11H17N3O8, containing a guanidinium group and pyrimidine ring. It bonds to the Na+ entry levels in nerve membranes, which effectively kills the cells by keeping out the necessary energy. When the nerve cells die like this, they cannot pass on information, which paralyzes the victim. Killing the nerve cells also makes for the stumbling and literally brain-dead zombie-like symptoms. In the Haitian zombie powder, tetrodotoxin was mostly used to make the person immobile and unresponsive. The paralysis caused the person to be unable to respond to stimuli, which made everyone, even them, think they had died.
In the powder was also an extract of the plant Datura stramonium, otherwise known as Jimson weed, after the havoc it wreaked on the settlers of Jamestown. The plant acts as a sedative in small doses, taking away the person's ability to think for themselves. The induced state leaves the victim confused, brain-dead, almost comatose, and aggressive, which are all behaviors associated with zombies as we know them. Along with the sedative property, the Haitian zombie powder contained atropine, or C17H23NO3, and scopolamine, C17H21NO4. These are toxic and dissociative hallucinogenic compounds derived from the Jimson weed. They irritated the skin onto which the powder was rubbed and broke it up so that the toxins could reach the bloodstream. Once there, they aided in creating the dopey, drugged, confused, and overall undead sensation the victim felt. Clairvius was indeed taken advantage of by a priest, but it was merely through chemistry, not witchcraft. He was not a zombie, but simply drugged.
Emergency rooms all over the country have been seeing people who snorted or smoked or injected or ate something that made them act so psychotic that even large doses of sedatives couldn't calm them down. Some of these people could only be knocked out by general anesthesia.
Alongside this zombie powder, another drug that caught the eye of the media more recently was bath salts. Yes, the new destructive chemical substance that caused aggression, rage, and even face eating. Surely zombies, right? Again, not really. Bath salts are designer psychoactive drugs, meaning that someone created them for the purpose of affecting you in the brain and nervous system, breaking you from normal functions and thought. Bath salts are a cathinized substitute, which are created to replace the psychoactive effects of the illegal khat plant.
Substituted cathinones. Cathinone is an organic stimulant found in a plant called khat that's native to the Middle East and East Africa, and it's a dangerous and illegal drug. Most bath salts use one of two main substitutes, mephedrone or methylene dioxypyrovalerone, which, because of it being really long, is generally just called MDPV. As with drugs like cocaine and meth, these substitutes stimulate the central nervous system.
This new cannibal-creating drug is related to methylene deoxymethamphetamine, MDMA, more commonly known as ecstasy, a highly hallucinogenic drug. They are related in terms of structure and function. This explains the delusional side effects of bath salts. They act very much like methamphetamine and cocaine. In short, they mess with your dopamine levels. Dopamine is a very important neurotransmitter. It relates chemical messages in the brain between neurons and is attributed to one's happiness levels. It is the central substance in the reward system, making you exhilarated when you do something beneficial for your survival and anxious when you do something harmful to it. The way dopamine works is that proteins are unleashed which produce it, entering the brain, and when it has done its duty, chemical receptors bond to it and remove it from your system.
Bath salts work like meth in that they force the brain to produce more and more dopamine, flooding your nervous system with the pleasure chemical. But like cocaine, bath salts stop your brain from reabsorbing dopamine once it has done its job. Because of this, the chemical bounces around in your brain, bashing around your nervous system and keeping you constantly alert and energized. Sounds great, right? It gets dangerous. The flood can last for days on end with the dopamine refusing you sleep. The prolonged insomnia causes fevers exceeding 107 degrees Fahrenheit, high blood pressure, and aggressive paranoia accompanied by delusions.
Angry, violent, delusional, and brainless sounds like a zombie to me, but again, it's simply chemistry causing these symptoms. Prions cause spongiform diseases such as Creutzfeldt-Jakob or mad cow disease. These diseases are characterized by holes forming in the brain which slowly degrade motor and speech function. The victim first starts to lose the ability to speak, regressing to grunts and groans, and eventually the ability to move fluidly. They are forced to limp and shuffle before being unable to walk altogether. Seizing is also caused. But what are these horrid prions?
All prion diseases are caused by the misfolding of the same protein called PRP, which after years of study we have determined does something. It seems to affect the formation of memories, and it's also apparently important to sleep since a mutation of the protein in mice was found to cause fatal insomnia. Whatever this protein does when it's folded correctly, we know it's important because it's encoded by what we call a highly conserved sequence. A sequence in our DNA that's very similar across a broad swath of life, in this case mammals. So all mammals have very similar forms of this healthy PRP protein. When we see highly conserved sequences, we know that even slight mutations to those areas are deadly. This is also why prion diseases are so easily transferred from mammal to mammal.
In our brains, proteins are constantly getting synthesized and folded. On a normal day, the proteins will fold properly, but when they do not, it can be quite dangerous.
Dr. Prusner coined the term prion to denote a protein infectious particle. Now we know that normal prion proteins are abundant in the body and are found on the membranes of many cells, including neurons. As with other proteins, they're produced in the endoplasmic reticulum, processed in the Golgi apparatus, and transported to the cell surface. And as with many other surface-bound proteins, they're engulfed by endocytosis and degraded within lysosomes.
There's PRP-SEN, the normal form, called a prion protein, and PRP-RES, the disease-causing form, or prion. These forms are either sensitive to being broken down or resistant to it. Both are made up of the same string of amino acids, but in different shapes. When PRP-res, the resistant form, attaches to the sensitive form, PRP-sen, they force the prion proteins to take on the misfolded shape. Then, the PRP-res proteins, now simply called prions, form a chain. They stick together because of their corrupted state. Eventually, the prion chains become amyloid fibers, which are toxic to cells.
When the fibers kill the cells, astrocytes sweep in to remove the dead neurons and leave holes in their place. Since the amyloid fibers continue their rampage through the brain, with the cleanup astrocytes following as the janitorial crew, the brain becomes riddled through and spongy, causing the spongiform diseases. A parasite, known as Toxoplasma gondii, infects the brain of a host in order to ensure its own survival and reproduction. Causing the disease toxoplasmosis, it infects and degrades the brain in order to change the host's natural behavior. Changing the behavior in the host allows the parasite to infect and spread to other potential victims. It infects the brain by causing the organ to undergo a series of chemical changes. First, the parasite forms cysts on the brain that fabricate tyrosine hydroxylase, an enzyme that produces dopamine, mentioned earlier as a neurotransmitter. Because there is now more tyrosine hydroxylase than needed to provide the necessary amounts of dopamine, the chemical's levels increase, which regulate and in this case erase natural fear instincts. Mice infected with toxoplasmosis are known to seek out their predators, such as cats, because they have lost the fear they would normally have. The parasite is literally walking these mice to their own deaths, so the host can be ingested, in turn allowing the parasite to continue its life cycle in the cat.
The altered dopamine levels affect mood, sociability, and sleep patterns, and have been linked to many cases of schizophrenia.
And there is research that suggests that the gigantic jump in cases of schizophrenia in the mid to late 19th century occurred at the same time as a gigantic jump in cat ownership. Indeed, some studies have shown a link between the amount of toxo and the amount of schizophrenia, suggesting that this little jerk might be interfering with human brain chemistry.
By inhibiting an enzyme in the host called TGPPT1, the parasites enhance the secretion of their invasive organelles. Toxoplasmosis takes over the body of its host, making it mindless and void of fear. The aggressive results of too much dopamine cause zombie-like episodes. Prions are misfolded proteins that causes holes to develop in the brain, which will eventually lead to disabled motor and speech functions. The spongy state that the brain is left in, as seen in Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, is why scientists have categorized it as spongiform disease.
In Haiti, the Beaucour's zombie powder, which supposedly created the undead, actually consisted of irritating chemical substances to break up the skin, after which the paralyzing agent that made them appear dead took effect. In the powder also was a sedative which left the victims unable to think for themselves.
Bath salts are a dangerous drug that increase the dopamine level in the brain and refuse its reabsorption and causing insomnia, paranoia, high blood pressure, and delusions, all leading to the aggressive actions portrayed as zombie-like.
Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite that infects the brain of its host and changes the dopamine levels, promoting uncommon behaviors. These new behavioral habits work in the parasite's favor and help it spread from host to host.
So, zombies. Great for a thrill, great for a video gamer 30. But are they even possible? We're running the tests, but
I don't know.